and try to define what form of tircha is mutar and what form of tircha is asur on Shabbat. So we start from a Tosefta that says, right, we had this idea already in the Gemara earlier, that you're allowed to wash the dishes from this Suda to the next Suda, to the next Suda, to the next Suda. And do you need to be, how exacting do you need to be? Says the Braita, Madichin 10 kosot she'im yirtzeh yishteh be'achat mehen. Matzin 10 mitot she'im yirtzeh mesev be'achat mehen. By the way, you notice that Matzin 10 mitot she'im yirtzeh mesev be'achat mehen. Meaning what we're talking about is taking the bed and turning it into something like the Roman, right, the way Romans would eat the hasava on Pesach. Pesach is coming. 30 days before Pesach. Let's start preparing for Pesach. The hasava is like, the Roman pictures where you'd lie back on your bed. It's not convenient to do it on the bed, so you take a bed, you change the angles, you change it somewhat. That's the tikkun that's asur. Now, you're having a few guests coming for Sudah Shlishit. Are you allowed to prepare all the beds? And the answer is yes. You're allowed to prepare all of them. Right? The kids are going to need more cups. Am I allowed to wash? They need to wash only the 3 cups they're going to need, or just wash the cups. It's okay. Right? That's the idea here. So whatever is done for Shabbat, you don't need to be that exacting because it's being done for Shabbat. And here, once again, either you say you're already in the tircha, doesn't change the tircha significantly, so it's not recognized as tircha for chol because you're going to use some of these cups. So that's one way of looking at it. The Rambam's way of looking at it would be the whole gzeira is if I'm doing a tikkun that's for if I'm fixing it for chol, if I'm fixing it in such a way that all of this will be fixed for Motzei Shabbat. Here, since I'm fixing it for Shabbat, there's no gzeira, and therefore whatever I do for Shabbat, even if it ends up not being used. Let's have the Rav Sternbuch gives a definition here. Mevash b'tosefta b'Shabbat shemedichin 10 kosot shemirtzeh yishteh be'echad mehen. הרי שאין צורך שוודאי יצטרך בו לאורך היום, אלא כל שיש אפשרות שיצטרך לו ביום מותר. If there is that possibility, you're allowed. שורש איסור הכנה קל משאר איסורים. לא יצריכו חכמים שום כבוד שבת לדקדק כמה צריך ביומו, רק מרבה בשיעורים מדיח כפי שירצה. ואפילו אינו מתכוון להשתמש בהם, אלא אפשרות רחוקה מותר. מכל מקום אף שאין בזה מלאכה, אם ברור לו שלא ישתמש בו, זהו טרחה בלא צורך ואסור. If you're right, don't you're not fooling anyone. If you know you're not going to use it, so it's asur. But as long as you're doing it in order to use on Shabbat, it might be that you don't use it on Shabbat. So lo nara. But as long as you're doing it for that, right? The isur is the choice of doing tircha of chol on Shabbat. But here you're doing tircha of Shabbat. The tircha never ends up being used. So you still the tircha. It was for Shabbat. Now, this is a very important thing because once you can define it as something for Shabbat, even in a way that's not as direct, right? There are very, very significant we can get very significant nafkaminot out of this, right? So the Magen Avraham says, based on this idea, מיטה העומדת בחדר שדר שם, ואיקה ביזיון ודבר מגונה שיעמוד כך, מותר להציל אותו לצורך שבת. Right? If my bed is, right, if this bed/couch is currently a mess, I don't have to leave it there the whole Shabbat if I'm going to be stuck with it the whole Shabbat. And this is very significant. This is very significant to many things we have nowadays. In their days, I think people weren't as offended by dirty dishes being all over the kitchen. Nowadays, we find it a lot more offensive. We find it's not kavod Shabbat. So Rav Moshe says about Sudah Shlishit, מה שמנקים השולחן שאכלו עליו סעודה שלישית בבית הכנסת קודם מעריב, אם אין צורך לשולחן שמתפלל מעריב להניח שם הסידורים, וגם אם לא במקום מעריב, אם צריכים לשולחן או שאינו דרך כבוד, יכולים לנקות. People are going to come to Ma'ariv, right? You have a shiur between the Ma'ariv and everyone sits and eats herring, and then people come in, it doesn't smell very good because you have, herring. What can you do? So you're allowed to clear it up. You're allowed to clean it up. Why? Because you have to daven Ma'ariv there. It has to be mechubad, right? It has to be. So based on that idea, once again, since you're saying I'm cleaning the table. Why are you cleaning the shul? The cleaning you're doing. Cleaning is a tircha that should be done during the week, not on Shabbos. But it's not mechubed, it's David Ma'ariv there. So I'm cleaning it for Ma'ariv. I say for Ma'ariv. You could cope. You don't need to cope. The idea isn't. Can I cope without this on Shabbat? The idea is, am I allowed to create a tircha that should be the chol's tircha and choose to do it on Shabbat? That's the issue, right? Same idea about washing dishes, says Maharshag. Maharshag, one of the Gdolim, we mentioned him already in the context of doing business with the Goy. He was one of the Maharshag 2 generations ago, one of the Gdolim in Hungary. And we should know, right, Shmu. It says Maharshag, im רוצה להציע מיטות או להדיח הכלים, it's washing dishes. בשביל שהבית נאה יותר, עם מיטות מקצועות והכלים מודחים בה, כי הם לקישוט הבית, אז באמת מותר להדיח ולהציע גם בשבת. So you're allowed to wash dishes on Shabbat if it's not comfortable to be in the kitchen when the dishes are out there and dirty. And where are all our doctors? The Tzitz Eliezer, who was the posek of the hospitals, right? So he was asked about washing dishes in the hospital. Now, once you have something big like a hospital, right, and you have to run a huge thing like that. So Tzitz Eliezer, נשאלתי במשגיח בית חולים כאן אם אפשר להתיר הדחת כלי האכילה בבית חולים לאחר גמר ארוחות בשבת ביום. הגם שבהחלט לא השתמשו עוד בהם באותו יום. We know they won't be used again. It's not like my kids come into the kitchen and who knows what they're going to take, right? In a hospital, the kitchen is closed. No one is going to take. It's sent out. The meals are sent out and the meals are sent out. הנהלת בית החולים, הנושא משרד הבריאות, דורשים זאת. לא כדי שיהיו... Sorry, it's blacked out. What's going on? Sorry. לא כדי שיהיו מוכנים לשימושם בכל, אלא מפני טעמים היגייניים וסניטריים שאין להשאיר בבית חולים כל כך מספר שעות, כלים שאינם רחוצים. Right? Sanitary, yeah. I don't need to translate these 2 words, right? דין זה שאין להדיח בשבת כלים שאינם צריכים עוד לאכול בהם is from the Gemara in Shabbos. Right? Quotes Gemara in Shabbos, brings them a chok Rambam Ravid. Rambam says it has to do with fixing את בזה מפני שהוא מתקן. Ravid משיג כותב שאין איסור מפני שהוא טורח לאכול. יש לומר שדבר תלוי בחילוקי הטעמים. לרמב"ם שמפרש הטעם מפני שהוא כמתקן צריך להיות אסור אפילו כשאינו לאכול. כל עוד שלא בא זה לצורך חיוב לשם אכילה. And that is a very important point. He says like this, you're allowed to fix the kli, right? The gzeira of not fixing a kli, and I say fix a kli, I mean removing the germs, etc., off the kli, right? Making the kli reusable. There's a gzeira, you're not allowed to do that, right? It's like fixing things. But that gzeira only applies, that gzeira does not apply to things you're going to use on Shabbat. If you're going to use them on Shabbat, there's no such gzeira. You're allowed to fix things in that sense on Shabbat to use on Shabbat. But am I allowed to wash the dishes just so the dishes won't be dirty in there? Presumably, says Tzitz Eliezer, no. Because why? Again, the Tzitz Eliezer says the Rambam's definition goes as follows. You're allowed to fix dishes you're going to use on Shabbat. You're not allowed to fix dishes if you won't use them on Shabbat. Now, again, we're talking about a very low-level kind of fixing, right? We're not talking about fixing the kli, right? Reconnecting the handle. We're talking about washing it. But that's a certain kind of fixing that's gzeira, not to do it on Shabbat for after Shabbat, because it's like fixing. Before Shabbat, you are allowed. That's very different from the Ravid. I'm just going to skip here to the Ravid. הטעם מפני שהוא טורח לאכול, יש לומר שהכל שאינו טורח בזה לצורך החול, הגם שאינו צריך לזה באופן חיובי לשם שימוש בהן באותו יום, מכל מקום מותר אזי להדיחם. Right? The Ravid says the issue is you're not allowed to do on Shabbat something that you should be, something that you should, first I'll explain it. According to the Ravid, why are you allowed to wash the dishes on Shabbat to use on Shabbat? Because the whole Isur is you're doing a tircha that should be the chol tircha, not the Shabbos tircha. Now, is this a Shabbos tircha? You say, yeah, I need hygiene now. I don't need hygiene after Shabbat. I need this. The hotel, the hospital has to be sanitary now. So it's a Shabbos need. So you're not doing a tircha, that's for chol, you're doing a Shabbos tircha. By the way, as we saw before, according to the Marashag, that could be in any of our kitchens. If you can put some dishes in the sink and read after Shabbat, fine. But if you had guests and you have lots of dishes and starting to fill up the kitchen, and that's gonna be unsanitary, then you can say I need to be sanitary now, not after Shabbat. Since it's Eliezer lichora, according to the Rambam, this would be a problem. Because the Rambam says the gzeira is you're allowed to wash dishes to use on Shabbat, but you're not allowed to fix the dishes to use later on. Says Ze'ev, but I need to fix my kitchen. So the kitchen will be sanitary. Yecholiyot. In other words, right, I think that's Argument Zev. Right? Because the simple definition, the heter, pashtut, is based on the idea of the heter seems to be I'm fixing this dish to use on Shabbat. That's why it's allowed. But I do wonder, so that's the way Tzitz Eliezer learned it. Zev is suggesting maybe I'm fixing my kitchen on Shabbat.
So we're basically looking here to lakel according to both sides. Like it sounds like it a little bit. In other words, in a way we're saying when there's not hachana and when there's not a real tikkun, even if there's hachana, then maybe it's okay, like the Rambam. And also, when it's not really hachana, even if there might be a little tikkun, then we can lakel like the Ravid.
Right. So yeah, the Tzitz Eliezer was it says according to the Rambam you should machmir.
Right. I'm saying here the Tzitz Eliezer is saying that the kula goes in the other direction. The Rambam is machmir and the Ravid is mekil. I understand that he wants to latir, no?
Oh, also material, yeah, no, because lemaisa, right? Lemaisa, when it comes to washing dishes. Right? Why is this not going?
Right. So this dishwashing kula, also what you said about the marshag, that also is like the shita taravid, but maybe according to the Rambam, it's no good.
Right. But that's why I said over here that when it comes to washing dishes, everyone seems to go with the ravid. Everyone talks about tircha when it comes to washing dishes.
Lechumra ulekula.
Oh. So that's the interesting thing, because you take Aruch HaShulchan holds like the Rambam when it comes to folding clothing, when it comes to making the bed, right? But does that not exist by dishes? Right? In other words, if you say that making the bed is a tikkun, it's a tikkun kli. Tikkun kli drabanan, the way we explained of that kind of makeh patish, that final thing that needs to be done in order to make it useful, right? Does that not exist by dishes? You can say the Ravid is right about tircha, but does that mean there's no issue of fixing the dish by washing it? Why is that different from making a bed? Right? Because, as I said, Aruch HaShulchan and Shulchan Aruch Harav seem to go with the Ravid about this, right, when it comes to washing dishes. What happened to according to they don't talk about the Rambam at all? That's what it seems to be, because the poskim ultimately do seem to base their kulot on the Ravid. We're going to see this more clearly in the next part. But already, when it comes to the Marashag, when it comes to Tzitz Eliezer, it seems to be based on, the Kula seems to be based on the Ravid. So I'll just go there. So Rabbi Yoel here is asking about folding Shabbos talis for next Shabbat. Presumably it's not a tircha, and presumably it's not really a tikkun. Now, is it good to have a talis sitting around all crumpled on Shabbat? I imagine not. In other words, I imagine that would be a reason to make el. So you could be concerned if you're folding your talis in a way that's very, very specific and very exact. Nagid, right? I can see why maybe that would be like the ironing the Rambam is talking about, but otherwise. Now, the truth is, honestly, personally, minhag avotai beyadai, I do what my father does and just bring the talis home and put it in the side room and then fold it after Shabbat. But yeah, according to the post game, right? Is that what Rabbi Yoel, you're motioning? Like, why do you do that?
Yeah, okay. I do the same thing. Question is why?
Right. So I said that the real answer is because minhag avotai beyadai. But you're right. There's mitzad adin, as we said. I really don't think it's required, right? And I really don't think it's an issue, right? I advertised we're going to be having kulot here, right? So
I heard that it's because it's like hachana leyom chol because you fold it the same way. I think even the Shulchan Aruch or the Mishnah Berurah say, I think the Shulchan Aruch said, if you fold it in a different way, then it's not hachana leyom chol. I remember something like that.
so we had that.
But we were talking about Shabbat, not Shabbat Chol.
So we had that over here. Everyone who quoted the Rambam, right? Everyone who quoted the Rambam said like over here, right? Right, this idea that Yonatan was saying, right? In Tikkun Kli, right? The idea, if it's based on the idea of Tikkun Kli, so if you don't fold it in a way that's very efficient, that's very effective, as far as Tikkun Kli is concerned, right, it shouldn't be a problem. But yeah, I think Yaakov's point about the Maharshag, Tzitz Eliezer, they all seem to, ultimately, they go with, when it comes to washing dishes, they go with the Ravid and not with the Rambam at all, right? Aruch HaShulchan quoted, once again, Aruch HaShulchan quotes the Rambam in Shin Bet when it comes to folding the clothing. When it comes to washing the dishes, Aruch HaShulchan only discusses Tirchat Chol b'Shabbat. Now, what about the Rambam's Gzera of Makeh Patish, Tikkun Kli? Disappears, right? It's a bit strange. I agree. Let's see a few other ramifications here, and then we're going to go into another.
Just a second. So just as
right, Baruch asked, what about putting the dishes in the dishwasher, right?
I'm just
So
your
says Rav
straight man.
Moshe, what?
I said I'm just your straight man.
Shkoyach, right? You always need someone who's you tell in advance what questions to ask to move the shiur along. So, thank you. Says Rav Moshe over here. Rav Feinstein says, "Kelim l'chochim b'sudat Shabbat. Hay mutar la'nicham b'mediach kelim l'chocham la'achar Shabbat. V'chanei mutar l'sadram kfi shetzarich la'adachatam." So the interesting thing is, he says like this: "Mutar v'en b'ze mishum hachana shebishvil hayom tov la'anshe habayit shelo yirta'u b'bayit b'makom sheba'im l'sham kelim l'chochim." I mean, your kitchen is filling up with dirty dishes. So what are you going to do? You could wash them, but you're not supposed to wash them. It's tircha. Now, again, if you have no option, you'll wash them, but you do have an option. So he says, well, you could put them in a box. Okay. I could also put them in this closet over here. Now, what's cool about this closet is that if I press a few buttons after Shabbat, this closet will also wash them, right? So I put them in I have a specific closet in my, right? I have two in my kitchen. I have two specific closets in which I place the dirty dishes on Shabbat, so no one will have to see them. But note the end here, the addendum. Right. Same in Mishneh Halachot. He says once again, same idea. Right.
So if I have two sets, for example, two sets of dishes, one that I use Leil Shabbat and the other I use Yom Shabbat, but I would ordinarily just put them in the dishwasher and keep them in an order.
Mm-hmm.
So then when I take them out, they're all ready to just put on the shelf. That would not be okay, according to Reb Moshe.
Right. So I actually had. I'll give you a simpler example. In my when I load my dishwasher, I make sure to put the cutlery in such a way that I can just pick up the forks, put them away, pick the knives, put them away. Right. I put them all separately. Now, there's one question of is there borer in dividing up the forks, knives, etc. But we're going to learn that according to most poskim, there isn't an issue of borer when it comes to cutlery. We're going to learn this. Don't worry. Sorry, Hashem, after Shemitah. But so we have some time apparently. But the other issue, as Baruch was saying, is that how much of a tircha is it? Even if there's no borer issue, there still could be a tirchat chol b'Shabbat because the tircha you're doing now is not a tircha of getting it out of the way, right? Now, again, the question to me, I just want to quickly see this in the Mishnah Halachot and the Krut Yosef and then discuss it. The Mishnah Halachot says this also about a washing machine. No, not. It's not here. Sorry, it's not here. I got mixed up. It's a different place. But the point is, he says, מקום הנחת כלים שמניחן שם גם בימות החול, והוא מקום מוכן בשביל הכלים קודם הרחיצה. נראה שאין בזה איסור. Right, I can put them where they need to go in the dishwasher. כיוון שהכל פעם צריך להניח הכלים ידו לאחר סלקם לשולחן. באיזה מקום? You have to put them down somewhere. You're not going to start piling them onto your counter. So where are you going to put them? You can put them in the closet, but here's a better closet, right? כיוון זה דרכו בכל יום להניח שם הכלים שאינם מכובסים מותר. צריך להיזהר שלא יתסדרם ויתקן במוצא שדאב ההכנה לחול. ניחם שם בסתם ולא יקבל בזה שום איסור. זה עושה מלכוד יוסף, כל זה כשדרכו להניחן שם כך בימות החול, בין אותו כדי לחסוך זמן במוצאי שבת. Now, sorry, בלבד שלא יסדרם, this is the sense I wanted, sorry, שלא יסדרם בתוך המדיח כלים, אלא יניחם שם ככל העולה בידו. And here's my question. How far do I have to take this?
I have to like put it in like in a bad system. Like put it in a logical way. I don't know.
Right, because look, do I need to flatten? Right, you have those things that hold the dishes, right? All those things everywhere that hold the dishes. You can flatten them all out and just make a huge pile. But then you have to be very careful that it won't fall over and break. And right, I don't think you need to go into that kind of tircha. Just if you have places that are. If there's a normal system, so I think the answer depends on the tircha. Once again, if it's just a matter of placing the dishes, you just place them, right? Placing the dishes in the place that's prepared, right? In the dish racks, right? So I'm just putting the dishes in the dish racks and just putting the cutlery in the cutlery rack. I think that's not a problem. Where is it a problem? It's a problem if I start putting the knives there and the forks there and more exacting. If there are pots and pans that I have to figure out how to put them in such a way that they will fit on the one hand, on the other hand, the water will go in and out, right? If you just place a bunch of pots on top of each other, the dishwasher won't work. You have to put them upside down. You have to put them not inside each other in such a way that will block the water. So once again, I think the answer is it depends on the tircha. If I just have, right, if I have the designated place for the dishes, right, the dish racks, I think I'm allowed to put the dishes one next to the other. I don't have to pile them up and have to worry they'll fall over. I think it's not the point. The point is when you have to start balancing pots in such a way that the dishwasher will be more effective, then you're doing tircha avchol. I think that's the point. Let's see. Right, there's the Mishnah Halachot. I got mixed up. I said earlier. What about putting clothing in the washing machine? Now that's worse because washing machine is something that is going to do a melacha that's asur, right? You're not allowed to wash clothing in any way. You're not allowed to wash clothing by hand on Shabbos either, right? As opposed to with dishes, you're allowed to wash them, barring everything we said just now. But you're allowed to wash the dishes on Shabbat. There's no melacha in that. There's a melacha in washing clothing, but Mishnah Halachot, I'm not going to read because I want to get to the next things and our time is running out of time. Mishnah Halachot says, if any of you have been in our house, in our house, you go to the second floor and you see clothing. So if the clothing there is in the way, someone's going to come and have a look at the second floor. And you say, I'll just push them somewhere. So you can put them in, you can stuff them into a closet, or you can stuff it into this special cabinet that pressing a few buttons after Shabbat will also wash them. There's no problem with that. You can't put the soap in because why are you putting the soap in? But you are allowed to put them in there. You are allowed to stuff them in there. You're not allowed to sort them, right? You can't start sorting the laundry into what's what. Again, forget borer. Let's assume there's no borer. We're going to learn that later on. Let's assume there's no borer. But even without borer, we still have the issue of the tircha. So once again, the question is, there are two criteria, I think. One is the tircha, and the other is, could I justify I'm doing this for Shabbat? And I think that in the end, and this is why I keep on referring back to this, in the end, the idea of the tircha for Shabbat stems not only from the concept of washing 10 cups because you'll need one of them on Shabbat, but also from the Gemara that we learned last time, but I keep on mentioning again over and over again, this Gemara of walking to the end of the Tchum. I'm allowed to walk to the other end of the city if people will say, oh, you're just going for a walk. Same goes for stuffing my clothing into the washing machine. I'm allowed to stuff into the washing machine if I just want to get it out of the way. It's not evident that I'm doing it for the melacha. I'm allowed to put it in the dishwasher if it's evident that I'm just getting rid of them and not preparing that for doing it Motzei Shabbat. Beseder. One more nafkamina, and then another important definition. Machloket Rav Shlomo Zalman and Rav Moshe. So says Michal Yitzchak, are you allowed to freeze your food on Shabbat? Right? You serve a lot of food on Shabbos lunch, and you say, "Oh my gosh, there's so much food. We're going to be eating leftovers all week." But my wife is not very happy. My wife has a klal. She has a rule: you're allowed to eat leftovers from Shabbat as long as you can still make havdalah from Shabbat. If you can no longer, you reach the part of the week where you can no longer make havdalah from the last Shabbat, you can't eat leftovers from Shabbat either, unless you froze the food. Am I allowed to freeze the food on Shabbat? I'm preparing it for eating it on Wednesday. Is that allowed? So says the Minchad Yitzchak, Yesh ladun rak mishum machana mi Shabbat ve'yom tov lechol. Muchach me'mvar הטעם דין כאן משום הכנה משבת בחול, ביאר יפה במהרש"ג, כיוון שאין כוונתו בזה להרוויח העבודה בחול, שדבר מוכרח להיות בשבת דווקא, שלא תיגנב וכדי שלא תתקלקל מחום השמש. כן, מדון דידן ממש, שהכוונה רק שלא תתקלקל, אין בזה משום איסור הכנה לחול. I want to explain this. The idea is, what's going to happen between now and after Shabbat? It's now noon. There's 6 more hours till Shabbat ends. What's going to happen in those 6 hours? This food is going to start rotting. So I want to save it on Shabbat. Now I'm doing 2 things. First of all, you have to put in a cabinet. So I don't have to leave my clothing for. I don't have to leave my food out on the counter on Shabbat. I'm allowed to put it in a closet. What closet do I put it in? Well, I'll choose that one that also freezes it. That's number 1. And number 2, so that's number 1. Number 2, I'm saving it now. I'm making it not rot now. Now that's a bit flimsy, right? Because when you're doing it in order to eat later on, right? This one's a bit more problematic in that sense, because I want to freeze it now so that it won't spoil at all. But okay,
then
when
it's an
not
issue
want
of
to
al
spoil for?
tashchit.
So that's a good point. I wonder if that's somehow in the right.
But he doesn't bring that as a concern.
He doesn't mention it, but I do wonder, because he is talking about the issue here is kilkul. Is that also something that's driving in the background? That does happen sometimes in shooting, right? Beseder. I want to go into one more.